After the French Revolution, slaves and freemen in the colony of Saint-Domingue, modern-day Haiti, rose up, throwing the island into chaos. Meanwhile, the French revolutionaries went to war against the majority of Europe, and although they were able to defeat the Spanish who controlled the east of the island, the British seized a number of coastal towns. So in order to try and gain the loyalty of rebellion slaves, the French agreed to abolish slavery in 1794. This encouraged the slave leader Louverture to swear allegiance to France, and he helped stop the British advancing. Plus the British began to lose a lot of men due to yellow fever. But real power in the colony was split between Louverture, who led the free black men in the north, and Rigaud, a mixed-race general in the south. Rigaud and his largely mixed-race army had rose up against the French but aligned themselves with the French government early on. But one of Rigaud's generals, Jean-Louis Valette, fell out with Louverture over territory and power. Plus the French sent a new governor to the island, Lavaux, angering Valette and many mixed-race people who thought the whites and freed slaves were taking too much power. So in 1796 Valette rose up and captured Lavaux in a coup in Cap Francois. However, Rigaud did not join in this rebellion, and Louverture marched on the city and rescued the governor. For this, Louverture was made deputy governor of the island. However, this is when Sontenax returned. Sontenax was the old governor of Saint-Domingue that freed the slaves years earlier, so had a lot of popular support, but he disagreed with Louverture on many issues. For instance, Louverture forced many former slaves to return to their plantations to work as paid labourers, and asked the whites that had fled to America to return. Sontenax, on the other hand, was more radical, so Louverture accused him of wanting independence and forced him to return to France. Meanwhile, 10,000 British reinforcements arrived in 1796, but they made very little impact. So with thousands dying of disease, the British pulled back to Port-au-Prince, hoping they could at least stop the rebellion from spreading to their colonies in the Caribbean. France, on the other hand, was now under a more moderate government, and they sent Hédouville to the island to reclaim control and undermine the two generals holding real power, Rigaud and Louverture. And finally, by 1798, the British accepted they could not take the colony, so withdrew. However, they surrendered to Louverture, undermining the French governor, and they later agreed to lift the blockade in return for Louverture not spreading the revolution. So in July 1798, the governor Hédouville met with Louverture and Rigaud, but they all failed to play one off against each other, so they continued to vie for power afterwards. Governor Hédouville then tried to arrest Louverture's nephew, but this failed, and Louverture's general Dessalines led an army on Cap Francois, forcing the governor to flee the island in October. And although France was not trading with the United States due to the Quasi-War, Louverture made another secret agreement which allowed the United States to trade with the islanders. This meant that Louverture, while still being loyal to France, was trading with two nations, whereas beforehand the colony could only trade with France. And although he still had support from the new French governor Rome, he still vied for power against Rigaud. But it was Rigaud who decided to strike first in June 1799 by seizing border towns and massacring the black and white people living there. Across the island, people rose up, and one of Louverture's prominent generals, Alexandre Pétion, decided to switch sides to fight alongside his fellow mixed-race people. But Louverture and his generals Henri Christophe and Jean-Jacques Dessalines responded quickly. They suppressed most of the rebels in the north in just a couple months, and executed many people in the process. Plus they got the new French governor to declare Rigaud a traitor, and got the Americans to blockade the ports that Rigaud controlled. Then in November, 40,000 troops marched south, easily overwhelming Rigaud's forces, and besieged Pétion in Jacmel. Although Pétion held out for a while, both he and Rigaud fled to France in early 1800. Dessalines, who led the invasion, infamously ordered many mixed-race people and prisoners to be massacred, giving the war its name, the War of the Knives. And as the Civil War was going on, Napoleon had taken power in France, and he promised not to bring back slavery. However, he also forbid Louverture from invading the Spanish part of the island, but this was ignored because Louverture thought that they had aided Rigaud. So in late 1800 he marched east and quickly invaded and took control of the undefended Spanish half of the island. And to prevent Napoleon from reintroducing slavery to the colony, he drafted a new constitution in mid-1801. Although he didn't declare independence, he gave France no advantages in trading rights, made himself governor for life, and forbid slavery from ever returning to the island. Napoleon, however, would later respond to this by sending 20,000 men to try and retake the colony.